Hey, Justin, it's great to have you back on the channel. Everybody, Justin Barrett is a jade diver and carver in California, and he's the owner of Just In Jade. Today, he's going to tell us a little bit about the history and culture of jade in Big Sur, California. So, Justin, when people say Big Sur Jade, what does that mean?
When people refer to Big Sur Jade, they're referring to a deposit of nephrite jade found in the ocean off the coast of Big Sur, California. It's different from most jades because around the world, jade is typically harvested in rivers and mountain quarries. So Big Sur is the only deposit of jade that's been documented out of the sea.
I'm actually wearing some Big Sur Jade right now. These were carved by Justin. They are my favorite pair of earrings. They've actually ruined all other earrings for me. I don't want to wear anything else, but Big Sur Jade, correct me if I'm wrong, there is something unique about it in appearance and even texture a little bit that sets it apart from even other deposits of nephrite jade.
Yeah, most deposits of jade are typically, very uniform in color, and they have, less inclusions. Big Sur Jade and a couple other deposits in the world like New Zealand have a very, very wide color palette. Other deposits like in British Columbia tend to be a different shade of green, but very consistent green colors. In Big Sur, we have, blue, greens, and grays, and very included jades. I call them character jades. They have, a lot of different stuff going on, like landscapes and characteristics of color that can be from anywhere from oranges all the way into blacks.
I feel like a lot of this information is still relatively new and unknown. And in fact, there are even fans of jade who buy and shop jade and love it and research it that don't even know about Big Sur Jade. Jade's story actually goes back to ancient times in the Middle Kingdom and pre-Columbian civilizations of Central America. But the history of jade in the States is much, much more recent. What's the story of jade in Big Sur? Where did it all begin here?
Well, there are many stories that they're unverified, but they place the discovery of jade in Big Sur from, gold miners back around the turn of the century. And they say it was shipped back to China to be carved and appreciated. Unfortunately, I haven't seen anything that verifies that. So it was originally recorded in the early 1940s, slightly after World War II. And Leopardy arts became kind of more and more popular during that time. And when Highway 1 opened in California, Big Sur's famous highway, there was a guy, I never could find his name. I think it was in 1943 or 44, he discovered Big Sur Jade and put it on the map. Big Sur Jade gained a lot of notoriety in the 1950s and 60s when people started diving for the stones. By the 70s, they were extracting multi-thousand-pound boulders and being published for sculpting the large stones in magazines like National Geographic. The local guy here where I live, named Don Wobber, was published in National Geographic in the late 70s. Ultimately, this loose approach led to a moratorium and eventually some strict regulations against commercial harvesting in the early 1980s.
Was that because they were bringing in like the big bulldozers? Or I don't know, I don't even know what kind of mining equipment gets jade, but like the big equipment.
Yeah, I can get a little further into the story with Big Sur Jade and how it kind of gained a huge rush. It was almost like a jade rush. Like in the 50s and 60s, the commercial abalone fishing kind of had come to a halt, and there was a lot of abalone divers just south of Big Sur that were looking for something to do. And I was lucky to meet a guy named Laddie Handelman years ago who told me a story about sitting on the dock cleaning his boat with a whole fleet of commercial ab divers who were just out of work. And a guy from a rock shop came down and said, "Hey, do you guys know about Big Sur Jade?" And everybody was like, "No." And so he took interest and talked to the guy. He said, "Look, I'll pay you $1 a pound for whatever you get." So, of course, this guy, ambitious and young and ready to go, he drove up to Big Sur and filled his pickup truck with green rocks and came down and called the guy. And he's sitting on the dock and he had a truck full of serpentine. Poor guy, the guy came down and looked at everything and went through his entire truck and gave him an education. But he had 2 pieces of jade that totaled 15 pounds. And, this was, in the late 50s, early 60s time where a few dollars was worth a lot more than it is today. And so He paid him $15 on the spot, and the whole fleet of fishermen jumped the next morning and went up to Jade Cove and started just laying waste to the place. They did everything they could do to pull big boulders up with cranes, and there was this rush that happened that went on, through the mid 70s. People were diving like crazy and extracting as much as they could. They were digging it out of the cliffs, and eventually, one of the divers pulled a large boulder out, 9,000 pounds, and drove it through Chinatown and in San Francisco to show it off and try to gain some interest. And the state ultimately heard about it and confiscated the boulder.
Oh my gosh.
Claimed it a national or state treasure or something, and put it in a museum. And there was a big deal, and a moratorium was put on all jade collecting. You couldn't go to the beach and find it. You couldn't dive for it. So the diving community got together and petitioned the state. Had a whole petition called Free Jade Cove. And I believe in 1981, they established regulations against commercial harvesting and small scale collecting only. And, you can only use certain tools and a certain amount of lift when you're diving to lift the stones off the bottom of the ocean. So
how much did they deplete the source before legislation stepped in?
They had brought a geologist in, and they said that, had they continued in that fashion, it would have depleted rather quickly. But it's been, 40 some odd years since then. And there's still, the resource is still doing okay. The culture around collecting jade in and around the ocean and people who work with the stone has grown enough to create a Big Sur Jade festival over the years. And I think in the early 1990s, and this festival has given the opportunity has brought people from around the world to visit and to showcase their work.
It sounds like there's definitely like an ethical standard that's being enforced because of the protection of that resource. So walk us through, like, for someone who is actually taking the Big Sur Jade, like yourself, and then cutting it and selling it, what process do you have to go through to keep that above board?
There's not a lot of heavy regulation as far as how much you can take out or what you can do with the jade you find. It kind of boils down, the regulations are more based around how you harvest the jade, which then limits what you can take out. It's boiled down to what an individual can carry on their own. And then the regulations around that are built to say, hey, you can only use hand tools with no moving parts that are 36 inches long. So you can't get a 6-foot bar down there to move a 1,000-pound boulder. You can really only move what you can move with a small bar. And then, the lift bag regulations about, lifting stones, you can only have a combined lift capacity of 200 pounds. And that's about what a person can carry, a good, strong person, because we have to carry everything up a 200-foot cliff.
Get your workout in.
Yeah, exactly.
What are some of the terms that you commonly hear regarding the American jades? For instance, we hear Big Sur Jade thrown around. We hear the term Monterey Jade. I've heard the word Vulcan Jade. I have no idea what that is. Can you kind of just discuss the terminology surrounding the California jades?
Yeah. So in North America, most of the jades are kind of characterized by the areas they're found, and then the color palette that is associated with that area. So in Big Sur, the terms used to describe Big Sur Jade are generally associated with the color of the stones, like ice or calico or midnight or creamy or the different kinds of colors that are just associated with the area. And then Vulcan Jade, actually to step back, is Big Sur and Monterey Jade are one and the same. Big Sur is in Monterey County. And so, Big Sur is the only deposit in Monterey County that is, on the coast there. So it's really such a small deposit that some people refer to it as the locality from the county it's in, or, the actual town or part of the coast that it's on.
Which term is more recognizable? Like, which one would you say is more often used?
I would say Big Sur Jade. But once upon a time, I think Monterey Jade was what it was coined, probably 30 years ago.
And then Vulcan Jade.
So Vulcan Jade is basically jade that has been deposited on the sea terrace as the ocean receded and the North American continental shelf rose up, and it's been sitting in this kind of like ancient sea humus. where there's a lot of heavy iron. Iron's heavy, jade's heavy, gold's heavy. Everything kind of settles onto the bedrock. And in the 70s, it was coined Vulcan Jade by a couple of the local jade hounds here. And it's kind of slowly but surely reached out to other places where they're using vulcanization as a term, where vulcanization is basically where jade has had chemical leaching.
It's not Star Trek.
Star Trek. I'm not sure where they came up with that or why, but it's where iron has rusted, where the water and heavy metals have settled, and it oxidizes the iron in the jade and the iron in the soil, and it leaches out of the jade and into the jade at the same time, turning the jade orange, red, brown, yellow. It's really beautiful, but it's just a thin skin on the outside. And so it's been long since outlawed collecting that stuff because it creates erosion. But every now and again, we find it, washing out of the seafloor when it has the same kind of chemical leaching process, or coming out of the cliff when a big rainstorm comes. You'll find them at the bottom of the cliff.
If a customer were to come across a piece of Vulcan Jade for sale, if it was collected that way, would it be an ethical sale of Vulcan Jade?
Sure.
Or should it never be sold?
There's a very finite market of collectors that they seek out Vulcan Jades. And, there are people that were collecting jade before it was outlawed for harvesting, directly from the bedrock. And that, I don't think that would be unethical because there was no regulations in place. And they regulate it pretty hard now, where if you have, if you're out there digging, you can get a ticket. There's been rumors that if you get a second ticket, they take your vehicle away because it's a national forest thing. It's a federal land. So,
interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know how accurate that is, but, if you find it in the ocean or at the bottom of the cliff, because we have a big cliff that we have to climb down and things fall out during the rainstorms, I don't think there's anything wrong with picking it up there.
Is it very valuable?
To some people, yeah. There's a faction of people who love Vulcan Jade and they prize it. I love it. It's a really special stone, but it has no value to my business. It's more of a collector piece for me.
Sure, because it wouldn't be cut, right? It would be left in its rough form.
Yeah, unfortunately, the worst quality jade, the softer, more porous the jade is, the better the vulcanization is because it can actually penetrate into the stone. So when you cut it, it kind of is chalky and white and not as pretty when you cut it. So it needs to just stay as whole stones. And
so let's move on. Let's just kind of fast forward to modern times. Tell us, Justin, about the jade culture surrounding American jade.
Jade culture in North America has for decades been fragmented in small groups associated with the localities where the jade is being found in the surrounding areas. Through events like the Big Sur Jade Festival and recently some newer events like the Monterey Bay Jade Festival and the Wyoming Jade Festival, people from these areas can connect with like-minded people from other localities in one place to share stories and stones alike. It has been a mission of many of the members of our community to further the culture and appreciation through facilitating jade carving workshops and educating the public about jade as an art form and as a collector stone.
Tell me about the future of Big Sur Jade.
Like any finite resource, Big Sur Jade is sensitive to overharvesting and has fairly strict regulations in place to ensure that it's not commercially available. I feel the future of Big Sur Jade will be driven by the niche rock hounding culture surrounding the area and the artists who use it as a medium.
Justin, that is a wealth of information. Everybody who wants to get in contact with Justin and purchase some of the jade that he sells, which is not just Big Sur Jade, but Yukon Jade, BC Jade. What else what am I missing? What am I forgetting?
Oh,
Guatemalan?
Yeah, Guatemalan. I carve jade from all different places in the world.
And it's spectacular. I mean, it's literally like art. I am so obsessed with my earrings. I'm a huge fan of Justin's work. I've been following it for a long time. He's a true sculptor, and you can see that in his art and in his jewelry made from jade. So be sure to visit justinjade.com, and don't forget to check him out on Instagram as well, at Just In Jade.